I think the third thing we talk about as far as issues within applying for coverage is the application itself. And we've spent a lot of time over the years talking about how important it is for the applicant that is filing for the coverage to read those questions carefully. And within that, the main issue or the main topic that insureds need to focus on is the medical underwriting component. Within that questionnaire, there's going to be duration specific questions. Have you ever experienced any of the following? In that line of questioning, the company is specifically asking, in your entire life, have you ever had any of those questions, any of those medical conditions? And you need to answer the question honestly and correctly. Similarly, there will be questions, say, in the last 5 years or 10 years. Time matters. So, and as we've discussed in the past, again, I don't know what happened to me when I was in grade school. But when you're looking at in the past 5 or 10, there are ways that doctors have to do their due diligence and look at their medical history. They need to, if they're uncertain about things, given the availability of records now online through portals and everything else, they really need to spend the time and look at that information and make sure they answer the questions correctly. If there are questions or concerns about their medical history and they check yes to something, it's also important that there's an explanation section, that they provide the relevant information. Even though you checked yes to having a medical issue, it may not preclude you from getting coverage. It may not affect how the policy is underwritten at all. As long as there's a detailed explanation, the company has that within the underwriting department and they can analyze that and assess that when they're issuing the policy. Another thing that one should consider is if there are questions or concerns and they're unsure and they maybe don't have the records in front of them, listing the doctors you've treated with. In that, I've answered the following to the best of my knowledge. Additional information can be obtained at this doctor, that doctor, and the other doctor's offices. And at the very least, what you're showing is that you've made a good faith effort to disclose everything you can. And the insurance company does have an obligation to conduct a reasonable investigation and gather the information and come back with questions. So you've, in essence, to an extent, fulfilled that burden. Where things get tricky is if you do have glaring medical issues that you do not disclose in the application, such as, you had surgery on your shoulder 3 years prior to the application and you mysteriously leave that out. Well, what happens is two things. One is if in underwriting it's discovered, maybe the claim is that the policy is rated, there are exclusions or other things that are issued, or premiums are affected. But where it really comes full circle is if you exclude that information or omit that information or in any way materially misrepresent information in the policy application, the policy may be issued. But at the time of claim, most policies have something called a contestable review, as you're well aware, which typically has a 24-month provision, which says in the first 24 months of coverage, if you submit a claim, it automatically triggers a review where the company will pull the policy, review the policy, and do an extensive review of the medical to see if you engaged in any type of omission or material misrepresentation that would have affected how the policy was issued. And they'll move to rescind coverage. So you're better off making sure you spend the time on the front end to avoid issues at the time of claim. The other concern is even if you're outside that 24-month window, if there are material misrepresentations or omissions in the application that would have affected how the policy was written, while the standard changes slightly after 24 months with what the insurance company has to show to rescind or take back coverage, they will request as part of the claims process your medical records. It's a disability claim. It's based on your inability to work in your occupation due to an injury or sickness or a medical condition. So even if you're outside the 24 months, if there is medical information that you did not disclose that is relevant to how the policy would be issued, they're not precluded from, nor should they be precluded from, going back, analyzing, looking at the underwriting guidelines, and challenging whether or not the policy should have been issued.
Okay, thank you.